there were a number of places they could have gone, and there are a number of places they have gone, if we're talking about different agencies and branches. But in the end, they decided to come down to Austin en masse. The Army created a 4-star command, a strategic command, just for this, moved it down to Austin. Defense Intelligence, the Defense Innovation Unit, an agency that we'll get into a little bit more, we call the Godfather around here because they kind of created a lot of the innovation infrastructure here. Austin, Texas is a lot of things. It's the island of misfit toys in the buckle of the Bible Belt. It is Silicon Hills, as I've heard it called. I'm not really fond of that name. And it's just growing in potential here, especially now because of the defense partners that have moved here. So you guys are all, interested in being part of that ecosystem, and everyone here in Austin is happy to have you. So we'll get into it. Again, that's me, right? Helena Krusek, she's our venture associate. She's up in Dallas. So we have 3 offices, or we have currently 3 offices in Texas. We have Dallas. We're opening the Houston office this week, actually. Grand opening is, I believe, Thursday. And we have this office here in the Omni. We cover 4 floors of the Omni. 1st floor, 5th floor, the 8th, which is the Center for Defense Innovation. That's where I usually am. And then here, the 16th, this is where I usually try to hide away and actually, skip some meetings to get some work done. The handsome devil on my right here is Kevin Landtroop. He's a defense venture partner. He's the kind of our executive in charge of the relationships and growing the network here that we have built at Capital Factory. He's in Dallas right now, I believe. All right, we'll get into the Austin Defense Innovation Timeline. So that D there, the 2016 spot is Defense Innovation Unit. We'll get into them in greater detail. It's an extremely interesting story. It's a little bit of a misnomer, but I like to think of them as DARPA 2.0. Zach Walker brought the Defense Innovation Unit down to Tier 2 Austin in 2016, and the success of the model that he built has been what many of the other agencies and branch offices have tried to emulate since moving down here. 2018, AFWorks came down. AFWorks has, I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe it's 12 national offices here, Boston, Las Vegas, Silicon Valley, Seattle, many others. Army Futures Command was stood up in 2018 also. Again, that was a 4-star command. If we're talking about branch commands, well, there's 11 4-star generals. There's 4 at the absolute highest level of the Army. Before Army Futures Command, there were 3. Now, this is a room full of smart people, so how many senators do we have? 100, right? How many governors do we have? 50, right? There's only 4 4-star generals in charge of the Army right now. And before Army Futures Command, there was 3, which was a very, very savvy move, because the Army Futures Command represents an extremely dramatic realignment of Army modernization, and I think they knew that they needed a 4-star command to actually, give it its best chance of success. 2018 also saw National Geospatial Intelligence Agency moving in to one of the in-house intelligence agencies. We have, now I'll get into that a little bit later. 2019 is the Center for Defense Innovation. You guys are down on the 8th floor. That's when we opened that up because of the participation, the growing participation of our defense partners in Capital Factory. Booz Allen Hamilton is also on the 8th floor. They were always on the 8th floor. They were actually here first. And Booz Allen's actually kind of great to work with. They're very respectful of our defense partners and what they're doing there. So, what does the future hold for us? We are currently in the talks with a number of different branch agencies, intelligence agencies from the community, some civilian agencies. There are agencies and departments that basically come here on a rotating basis quarterly to engage with some of our startups, engage with our defense partners, and try to see where they can collaborate on some initiative programs. There are a number of different ways that you can do business with the government. The traditional GSA bidding process and the government procurement bidding process doesn't need only to apply. There's a number of different ways that we can get into to contract with the government, and many of them have been pioneered here in Austin and in the Beltway in the past 2 or 3 years. So grand opening was in February of 2019. That's General Murray there at the grand opening. He is a very common presence here. Sometimes it's interesting for us because we'll show up and then we'll hear that there's a 4-star walking the halls with that. Very, very little notice for us. So, or 3-star or 2-star or a senator. In intelligence work, we used to say you can tell the new hotness by where all the daggers are pointed, and in some ways, that absolutely applies to what's going on here in Austin. There's a lot of focus, there's a lot of attention in this area, not just negative, a lot of positive attention, and this place has attracted a number, and the UT system headquarters has attracted a number of VIPs to this area on a regular basis. So, Army Futures Command is a 4-star Army command. It's a very, it's generally, to compare them to AFWorks, they're more of a top-down model organizationally. Army Futures Command exists to consolidate all of the modernization methods or all of the modernization initiatives within the Army that are usually or traditionally have been branch dependent, and bring them under one command so that they can efficiently and effectively solve the needs of the future warfighter with initiatives like open system architecture, things like that, where it would be very hard for an intelligence branch, artillery branch, logistics branch to coordinate their modernization needs. Army Futures Command consolidates those. Army Applications Lab, and Cassandra, please feel free to correct me if I say anything errant here, is the innovation and small business outreach department of that, or the facilitation of that. So it's kind of where the rubber meets the road as far as breaking down the major Army CFTs, the cross-functional team priority requirements of Army modernization. Army Applications Lab looks at each one of them and breaks them out and breaks them down into very discrete technical requirements that they can then farm out to the general marketplace. And by the marketplace, we're talking about small businesses through the SIPR program. We're also talking about large-scale procurement initiatives like Future Vertical Lift, which is a major enterprise modernization push that's going to involve the creation of new vertical lift systems. 75th Innovation Command out of Houston. It's Army National Guard Command that is mostly involved in think tanking. A lot of major strategic needs for Army National Guard, Army Reserve, and potentially there's some cross-pollination there. Active duty Army Command needs. Most of the work they do right now, or have done, has been in the soft skills, the human terrain aspect of low intensity warfare. So basically figuring out what the requirements are for the Army to capture and hold long-term asymmetrical warfare. Anyone know asymmetrical warfare doctrine? Right. 75th Innovation Command has done a lot of work on trying to figure out what our technical requirements are going to be and how we should, and how the Army should actually train to fight that type of war in the future. AFWERX. AFWERX has, by comparison to Army Futures Command, more of a bottom-up model in which there are discretionary funds that are basically issued out to local offices that shop out for possible technical solutions to priority requirements in the Air Force, training requirements for the pilot pipeline, and then those offices, like the one here, then work with startups in order to help the startups write the white paper, the 5-page white papers for the last round that they did this, and submit. A lot of startups, there's a lot of flaming hoops that have to be jumped through in order to just engage with government contracting in general. Things like cage codes. A lot of people don't know what a cage code is when they first start. AFWERX is there to help assist startups and small businesses begin the process of applying for a SIPR. And SIPR is a technical term, a technical acronym to really represent more or less a business research grant with specific KPIs attached to it. Defense Innovation Unit. Now we're going to get into that a little bit more specifically here, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that. NSIN. So NSIN, National Security Innovation Network. This is a more Homeland Defense, Homeland Security organization that primarily reaches out to Research One universities for innovation, and has traditionally worked with universities and research programs around the country. Formerly known as MD5, now it's NSIN. NGA, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, very, very discrete technical requirements, very, very, very technical requirements, and they're looking for what everyone else is. Texas Military Department, we'll get into that maybe a little bit in the future here. All right, SOCOM, JSOC, I mean, DevGrew's, consistent with JSOC. I'll tell you what, we'll talk about that offline if you have any questions. So, government partners, why they matter. So the SIPR program is functionally like I said, it's a business grant program, and our defense partners are non-dilutive shareholders in the project. There are multiple phases to most SIPR programs. AFWERX is running 3 phases. The first phase can be anywhere from 50 to 100, 150K, in some cases more, depending on the need and the nature of the submission. Phase 2 can go anywhere up to, I think I'm allowed to say 1 million, but a little bit more than that. And then phase 3 is infinitely renewable. There's no cap on it. With the point when if there was a small business that could create the equivalent of a F-35 replacement, then hypothetically there is absolutely no limit to what the AFWERX Phase 3 SIPR contract would be for that. The key here is it's non-dilutive, and I'm going to jump the gun here because there's a lot of prep notes here that I'm already I kind of just want to get to. But I'm going to speak about Air Force specifically. In the case of AFWERX, if you guys win a phase 1 or a phase 2 with AFWERX, there's a few key KPIs to meet, but in general, what you're doing is you're trying to meet the requirements for moving up to the next level. Once you get to the phase 2, you're already in pretty good shape as far as scaling up and developing your product submission for the Air Force. When you're looking at phase 3, there are many other requirements that are usually unique to the phase 3 level. One would be a separate private or commercial vertical, because when we're talking about government contracting, we're talking about extremely long funding cycles and fulfillment cycles for that. Sometimes we're talking about decades. We're talking about 5 years before review, 10 years, 15 years, before renewal in some cases. So what our government partners need is they need to make sure that a small business, a registered small business, is both capable of scaling up, but also how's it going, guys? Is capable of scaling up, but also is just robust enough to actually stem the seaworthy enough to exist within the market and fulfill that contract. They're also interested in private investment and equity, because that helps with scaling up, helps with mentorships, helps with a lot of things. And so for some of our startups and partners, it's really great for them, because this non-dilutive equity means that they have full, more negotiating power once they win a phase 1 or phase 2 contract with the Air Force, to then go to venture capital, private equity, and say, we need to scale up. We'd like to bring you guys in. If they need to, dilute equity, they can. They have more market power to do so. So you are being encouraged, at least in the terms of Air Force and AFWERX. Again, I don't want to speak for Army Futures Command. You are encouraged to actually have a separate vertical and to seek further investment. Oh, we'll get to the Q&A.
Oh, are we not doing questions?
No, you can actually go ahead.
No.
I'm kind of interested now.
Sorry. What's the upper limit of what's considered a small business? Is there a headcount, personnel, revenue cutoff?
The small business requirements that were set by GSA or the SBA, and GSA maintains are what as far as I know, what the Defense Department uses, right? Including things like hub zones, set asides for small, for veteran-owned and minority. I believe all of those qualify for a small business. Within the new infrastructure that's being built here. Let's see. This applies largely to phase 2 and phase 3 contracts. Once under contract, revenue stream is consistent, nearly guaranteed. Of course, everything is conditional on fulfillment of the contract, right? The other thing that we haven't gotten into here is the defense partners that are here. They're more and more. They're here to understand how small business operates and what the requirements are for small business and working with small businesses are, and they're here to help. They really are here to help. Yes, it's competitive, and yes, another small business that maybe could scale up or write a white page. They might have a better shot at a contract, but like in the case of AFWERX, some cases they bring on multiple competitive technologies to see which one's going to, especially at the phase 1 level, which one's going to sink and which one's going to swim. And they, of course, cannot be, they cannot show favoritism. They're going to issue, they're going to help grow and help scale these companies as best they can. Let's skip this. All right, I think we already covered most of this. Army Futures Command, Major 4-Star Command, consolidating all the needs of modernization from every branch within the military, which is a huge task already, and then breaking all of those modernization requirements into discrete technical requirements that they then farm out to the market. So I believe it's 5 right now, like long range artillery. You have future vertical lift. You have soldier lethality. Net,
Are you talking about the cross-functional
the
teams?
CFTs. Yeah, there is now. Is APNT is actually part of network, I believe, right? No, APNT is separate in of itself. I love APNT because I feel like somebody like it's a great objective, but I think right now everyone's figuring out what that's going to look like in the end, you know. The most recent, let's see, so the first announcement for a CFT solicitation was the autonomous resupply event that we hosted June or July. I think it was late June.
It was in July.
Mm-hmm. And that was basically second, last 2 miles of logistics for moving 100-pound artillery pieces, when the very nature of artillery is that you fire, you move. Mobile artillery is you fire, you move, so that you're not subject to counterfire. How do you have an autonomous, artificially intelligent system that will move rapidly with the commander's initiative, new location, right? Defense Innovation Unit. That's Zach Walker, aka what we like to call the Godfather. He hates that name, so we like to call him that. So, effectively, Defense Innovation Unit. So I like to describe Defense Innovation Unit by first describing DARPA. I think we've got enough time to do this. If you look at the DARPA model, think tanking how future wars are fought. That's great, but if you do not have a customer to buy the technology that you then develop, based on how you think tank to how future wars are going to be fought and future near-peer adversaries are going to compete with us, then who are you developing the technology for? If the U.S. government is not going to buy it, are you developing a technology that's then open on the market, right? Looking for investment from possibly overseas, right? And Defense Innovation Unit was, stood up several years ago, and with the understanding that what we have to do is we have to think tank how future wars are going to be fought, how near-peer adversaries are going to compete with us in every kinetic and cyber and economic realm, and then they're going to take that requirement and shop that requirement to potential customers within the Defense Department and within the intelligence community and the government. Once they have a buyer, once they have somebody that says that they're willing to actually, develop that technological solution, then they take that to market, ensuring that we're growing our capacity and modernizing our force, our force, and not potentially somebody else's. DIU works through the SIPR program, works through very conventional solicitation bidding processes that you can find on their website. AFWorks, that's Jen Mars, community outreach for AFWorks. AFWorks is down on the first floor. AFWorks, I basically described them earlier. They are, working in small offices around the country, looking for potential small businesses that have the potential to answer technical requirements. One example of a recent success story here at Capital Factory was there was a gentleman with a company that just knocked on their door and said, what is it that you guys do? And over the course of a conversation and a demonstration, they basically pitched to him a pivot that his technology could be used for that he had never thought of, right? And there's another, example of a AFWorks executive walking by, seeing a technology being demonstrated to somebody else and saying, hey, we might be able to use this for the pilot training next program. Rapid to phase 2, now looking at phase 3 development. AFWorks is really kind of like blazing the path right now because they are they're writing a lot of checks on the SIPR program for technologies that they see potential value in. My first event was the Spark Collider, which was 200 SIPR awardees from the last fiscal quarter, all in one place or on 4 floors over 2 days, 16 or 17 different events. It was basically like a convention in here. And those were all recent Sivir awardees. They actually awarded, I believe, 600 Sivir grants in that one quarter between phase 1 and some rapid to phase 2s, representing millions and millions and millions of dollars in life-giving, light-keeping on funding for startups. National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Intelligence agency focused on, geoimaging satellites. One thing to make sure when you're wondering if your technology or your service is relevant to the agency, try to think about what their mission set is. NGA is very interested in a lot of things. They're working on a lot of app development initiatives right now, a lot of national disaster and computer vision technologies. But if you develop a technology that works in data compression, and you develop a technology that works in just base encryption, then that technology is very adaptable to a number of different platforms and a number of different agencies. It will work for NGA, but it will work also for the Army's, potentially for Army's APNT, as well as Air Force's, MDO, Multi-Domain Operations Initiative. The best place to look for all of this is to go to the websites of the branches and of these agencies and see what they're looking for. Also, if you win a contract, a phase 2, a rapid to phase 2, or eventually a phase 3 through the Sivir program, then you have a decent amount of credibility and maybe even some longevity when you're working with another agency. A big movement right now, especially within the Army, but also within the Air Force, is open system architecture. The idea that everything should be, if you have one technological solution, that technological solution should be both scalable and adaptable to a number of different vehicles / infrastructures / C4 and command and control infrastructures. So once again, a data compression that NGA is interested in could work very well in the Air Force and MDO, Multi-Domain Operations Initiative, the Army's Multi-Domain Operations, APNT, and we'll get into APNT here. APNT, I love APNT. I hope Cass will have a couple minutes for you to talk about it. As far as from my naive perspective, it seems to be kind of like this really awesome kind of unicorn. We don't know what this technology looks like right now, but a kind of a regionally distributable and stand-upable GPS technology that is going to be more robust and survivable than the current, Gen 1, Gen 2 GPS technologies. Everyone's still figuring out what this technology is going to look like, but we know we need it. So we have many corporate partners and customers that are here, that were here before, and many that are joining because of our defense partners. Oracle, Google, Amazon, Daimler, Microsoft was our co-sponsor for the Defense Day of the Austin Startup Week. Their other co-sponsor was Bell Helicopters. Booz Allen Hamilton, getting into the traditional defense contractor space. We have BAE, regular talks with Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. Our Innovation Council members are major enterprise companies that are members with Capital Factory and part of our mentorship infrastructure. So if you were to join Capital Factory, then you would have access to many C-level and C-level executives within our Innovation Council. We can get into the mentorship program a little bit more, but with Capital Factory membership comes access to a large mentorship program. Did you guys go over that in the tour at all?
We saw the area.
Oh, you saw the area. You saw the accelerator, right? So there's different ways to join. You can join as becoming a member of Capital Factory. You can apply to the accelerator. Both provide the same levels of access to our facilities, our resources, and our mentorship structure. Defense innovation events, South by Southwest Defense Track. That's what I'm working on right now. We're going to host a defense house, which will encompass a large majority of the defense programming for South by Southwest in 2020. Startup defense track that just came and went. Capital Factory Defense AMA, we're going through right now. TDIF, Texas Defense Innovation Forum. Now, Kevin Landtroop is the founder of that, our venture partner. They have roughly monthly meetings and newsletters that go out. It's basically just a expanded network for what's developing here. There's also the Defense Innovation Forum, Defense Entrepreneurial Forum. AUSA is looking about bringing an office down here, Association of the United States Army, and there will be at least one major AUSA event in 2020, possibly 2 or 3, because Army Futures Command has a very big footprint here in Austin. DIU, let's see, we'll skip to AFWorks frequently schedules events like the Spark Collider. Next Spark Collider, I've heard rumor that we're going to double the number of startups participating, which means we're going to have to rent out some convention space. But AFWorks, seriously, AFWorks is absolutely they're really going for it. They're really leaning into this initiative. Fundamentally, and we're going to bring Cass up here in a second, the major takeaways, we can talk about the FAR, it's in this slide deck, but I really like to nutshell things, like to come up with a rule of thumb for how things operate, a good takeaway. And our defense partners came down here because, for a number of reasons, but a lot of, there are a lot of large enterprise traditional defense contractors that innovation can occur but doesn't have to occur because you might have employees in every single congressional district, right? Startups represent potentially 325 million good ideas. Now, of course, they're not all going to be good ideas, right? But there's a lot of innovation potential out there, right? But the barrier to entry was never been higher than it has been up until recently. So what everyone's trying to do here is lower the barrier to entry, lower the intimidation factor of working with the government. The FAR is 2,300 pages, and that's before the defense annex. It's 8.1 pounds, which anyone that likes Jerry Maguire knows is the weight of a human head, right? So if you have 4 employees and you're paying for them with future equity in the potential value of this company, that's a barrier to entry. You don't have time to even consider contracting with the government. The SIPR program is designed and is effective at trying to allow for a democratization of innovation and potentially, hopefully encouraging innovation within larger scale, program and product and services providers, because again, we're bringing competition to the marketplace. So this is a win-win across the board for everyone involved. Many of our Innovation Council members, many of the traditional defense contractors, they're excited about this too, because they can innovate more. They can reach out to companies, startups, and they can say, hey, let's partner up. Hey, what is it you want to accomplish? You have this discrete technology, but no ability to scale up. We have decades of experience in project management, and we can help incorporate your technology into our major enterprise solution for Sikorsky helicopters or Bell's drone initiative. So there's a lot of things that can happen here, but it all starts with bringing startups and small businesses to the table. So I think with that, we're going to get into the nitty gritty. Small business technology transfer and small business innovation research grants, OTAs. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the Q&A section. So, all right. Joining us now is Major Cassandra McGinnis with Operations Director for AAL?
Yes, so
Yes.
I'm Cass McGinnis, and I just go by Cass. I am an Army Engineer Officer. Hi. Nice to see you again. I'm an Army Engineer Officer, and I'm also the Deputy of Operations at Army Applications Lab. Just to give you a background on me, I've been in for 21 years. I've done all kinds of engineer work. I've been a topographic analyst for 6 years, and then I went over and I was a horizontal construction engineer for about 12 plus 13 years, and then I was a combat engineer for the last 2 years. Then I heard about this really cool assignment here. So if you're in the Army, there's no better assignment that you want. Hopefully I don't get emotional. So it's like if you can bring a technology into the Army that can reduce casualties on the battlefield, there's nothing better. There's no better job in the Army, right? So that's why I'm here, and I'm grateful to be here. So Army Applications Lab, who are we? What do we do? So we are a relatively new organization. We're less than a year old. We are an innovation organization within the Department of Defense that focuses on Army problems. We're here to focus on Army problems. That's what makes us different. Let's see. So how do we get those Army problems? We get those Army problems by a whole bunch of ways. Whether it's directly engaging with the soldier, and we ask them, what is enabling you, what's hindering you from accomplishing your mission effectively? And that can be day-to-day operations, or that can be out in the battlefield. We get them from project managers, product managers, project executive officers. We get them from eight cross-functional teams, and we get them from concept developers. So there's a whole bunch of ways we receive these Army problems. We go ahead and we log them into our database. We log them into Salesforce. That's something new to us. We know a lot of you out there know Salesforce. We don't. We're learning. But it's a pretty good tool to use, so effective tool to use. So we log them into the database, and then we go ahead and we're looking to leverage commercial technology, right? Dual use. We're looking to leverage commercial technology as potential solutions to our problems. And we're reaching out to tech startups, we're reaching out to small businesses as potential solvers for those Army problems. Right now I would say we're about a 48-man team, but we're all excited to have such a wonderful mission, but we need you in order to get it done. So I'm here to answer any questions.
All right. The field is yours.
Does your department sponsor SIVRs?
Yes.
You put SIVRs out?
Yes.
How do you access those? How does somebody go about
That's a great
accessing?
question. So you can go to sibir.defensebusiness.org. If that's too long, just go to .gov, or you go to sibir.gov, and it'll walk you through to where.
We don't have it up here right now, but I will get it to you guys.
Is that
Yeah,
how
that's it right there,
it's spelled?
sibir.defensebusiness.org.
Oh, really? That'll work.
That'll work right there.
Mm-hmm. So
There's a
you,
link from the Army EAL website also.
yes.
Yeah,
So-
there's a
no,
direct
no,
link.
We don't have the link up yet.
Oh,
But no, not yet.
AFC?
No, we don't have it up
Okay,
yet.
okay.
But if you go there, you'll see that we have 4 problems that we've announced. Now, and it'll say, it'll walk you through, right? Department of Defense, and then you'll go where it says all the forces. You'll click on Army. There'll be 32 that'll show up, but there'll be 4 that says AFC. So those are the 4 that we have right now. Those close tomorrow. So they'll open back up. I think it's November 26th. I think it's when it opens back up. But there'll be a whole new, problems pushed out.
Can
Yes.
I piggyback on that one real quick?
Yes.
So what are generally the requirements for these? So
Yes. So you'll just go ahead and you'll go on the site, and you'll see what those 4 problems are, and you just apply. You'll just go ahead and apply for the SIPR. It walks you through it. So another way that I like that AAL likes, you could go to aal.army, and you'll see a red button on top that says Start Now. You'll click that button, and it'll walk you through. It walks you through like details. Have you ever heard of if I said I need a white paper? You know, I have this great wonderful product. I think the Army can use it, and I'll say, okay, I need a white paper. Most folks don't know what a white paper is. It's a concept paper. So what AAL.Army will do, it'll walk you through all these questions, and at the very end, it'll generate a white paper for you. It's very user-friendly. It's easy to use. Once that white paper generates, it populates automatically into our box, and we have 4 engineers that actually sit there all day reading these white papers. That's like their only job is to read these white papers. It's led by, their team is led by Dr. Casey Purley. She's a neuro something. She's very smart. She's super smart. So she knows exactly what we are looking for. You know what those Army problems are. We actually have about 44 Army problems, but again, it's just best to look at what's being published right now on Sivir.gov or the long version there. Only because we're fairly new, we're still trying to validate all of these Army problems. For an example, someone came to us, I think it was actually through a CFT, the Long Range Precision Fires, and they said, we need an autoloader. So we automatically went to work, and thank God BAE was in the building because they said, we're working on an autoloader for the Army already. And we were like, oh crap. And sure enough, we had already funded them to create, come up and create this product. So we were able to like sit back and say, okay, we need to validate these. And so we're taking a little longer. But if you go to Sivir.gov, it'll show you exactly what we've already validated, what's already been endorsed, and those will come out on Sivir.gov.
Yes, thank you. Natalie Frensley. Could you tell me a little bit about the socio-behavioral/human terrain lane in terms of your original, like 2.5 years ago, it popped up when future command was, someone's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
And also, can you tell me about how the 75th innovation,
The Innovation Command.
how that fits into your ecosystem?
Right. Okay. So the first, I can't answer.
I might have.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Looking at the CFTs, which you can find the CFTs all over. They're on. They're written in a Wikipedia, or trust that source. You can find CFTs, in half a dozen journal and industry articles.
Is that was your question? Like how to the CFTs?
Well,
how
the
it's
soldier.
evolved and updated today?
The soldier
because
lethality CFT.
I know that there have been some changes.
Yeah, the soldier lethality CFT has a couple of discrete technical requirements that roughly meet the intelligence, civil affairs, psychological operations aspect as force multipliers, in combat, low intensity combat operations. And so I'm gonna move it into
that's
field.
okay.
So you can look in there under soldier lethality.
Right.
I don't see, because this is mostly a highly technical operation, there isn't a lot of the soft stuff in there, but that's where you'll find it. And we can talk about, after at the happy hour, I'd love to talk to you about 75th Innovation Command, because they are going full on about civil affairs, PsyOps, and human terrain right now.
And we're actually talking to them about some of our Army problems because 75th Innovation has a lot of PhDs. That's their expertise. They have a lot of expertise in certain things that they can help us right away with.
A lot of economists too.
So yes, but I do have a cheat sheet that I can give you. It has it has 8 CFTs. It has every single one of the 31 modernization efforts that they're focused on.
Thank you kindly.
You're very welcome. Yes.
So how does Army Futures Command interact with all those organizations that were managing processes to integrate innovation before? For example, our company does work with TACOM, and within the Tank and Automotive Command, we've got a research and engineering center, TARDEC.
Right.
And before they were managing a portfolio of innovative technologies and trying to see some of those through to programs of record. It sounds like you have stepped in and taken that role from them. Have you absorbed some of those personnel, or how does that work?
Yes and no. So there are about 12, I would say another one of those organizations is ASALT, right? So ASALT they have 12 PEOs, correct? And they all have portfolios. They have certain portfolios. So what happened was everyone came to the table, and certain things were given to us, just like a piece of the pie.
Okay.
And the rest was, so that the other organizations can continue to focus on, there's a lot to focus on. We have 31 modernizations to focus on. There's hundreds of modernization efforts. So.
And remember, this is the entire modernization of the U.S. Army is basically consolidated into one 4-star command.
Right.
For this sole reason, right? So and then AAL's got the unenviable task of breaking all of those major modernization campaigns into discrete technical requirements and finding market solutions for them, or inspiring market solutions for them.
Yeah.
Like in the case of autonomous resupply.
Yeah, and we continually talk to our partners. We continue to talk to ASAL, so we make sure that there's no, blurred lines, so to speak, and that we continue just a good working relationship. Because it's kind of it kind of gets dicey when you come in and you just start,
Right.
So they all came to the table, and it was an agreement, and we have really good working relationships with those guys.
So do you have a similar goal? Some of these innovations will eventually become programs of record,
Yes.
and then Army Futures Command will hand them off to TACOM, to CCOM,
Yes.
to NCOM?
Yes, 100%.
Right.
I thought yes.
So you mentioned a few of these 3-letter agencies. So SBIR is a gateway to all of them? Like it's a...
So,
Oh, go ahead.
so for us, you can, I think you're asking how do you get funded? Is that?
or if I file an SBIR, who does it go to?
So that's a very good question. So when you go to that site, for us, I can speak for us, when you go to that site, we constantly check that site, and we'll see if someone went ahead and submitted. So once it closes, so tomorrow it closes, our team is going to see who went ahead and submitted a paper against that site, if they didn't already go through AAL.Army. So.
There are a number, and you mentioned 3-letter agencies. I mean, agencies in general. If we're talking about, congressionally controlled budget, level, right? There are 2 or 3 off the top of my head, different avenues for working directly with them on, anything from discretionary budgets to a couple other things. Again, those are things I don't really want to get into too much. We have some here at Capital, speaking for Capital Factor, we have some exposure because, when you're talking about JSOC or a 3-letter agency, a lot of times they have other avenues with which to procure. Between SOCOM and JSOC and a couple other agencies, I would say bi-monthly, we have scouting expeditions coming down from all over the country to talk to the defense partners about what have you guys seen here, what potential is there. We usually schedule demonstrations for some of our members that we feel, or that they feel there's a strong correlation between their need and ours and the possible solution. And when you're talking about especially special operations organizations, especially, they have actually a fairly strong and robust history of taking small businesses from all over. I mean, kind of Crane effectively started over in Coronado, effectively started out as a partial inclusion of the small business, right, into that operation, and building them up and scaling them up, right? They have entire organizations within their own joint service organizations that have decades of experience scaling up small businesses. So once you're in with them, you're really in, as far as they'll help you get to where you need to be. But that's a whole other conversation. Yeah, that was a good question.
There's also a broad agency announcement on AAL.Army that can help you as well.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I had a follow-up.
Yeah.
Simple one. So how do I know whether I'm ready for phase 1 or phase 2? Is there a criteria that I should
Yes.
follow?
So it depends on proof of concept for Sivir 1. And then again, that's about 100 to 150K. And then it's prototype for Sivir 2, right?
It depends on, of course, that's coming from AL side. It would depend on the branch and the department. But yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, you don't submit for a phase. You submit for we have a possible solution, we have a 5-page white paper or more, depending on the requirements, and that's up to the agency, that's up to the department to actually get back to you on where they feel like you might fit in and what phase you're going to start out at, right?
And the great thing about the Army, about AAL, okay, so everyone's heard about the Valley of Death, right? So it's kind of like you have an idea or you have a prototype on this side of the valley, and then on this side you have the community in which that is supposed to go to, right? Support. So AAL is that bridge. We're that bridge. We're going to stay with you that whole way to make sure you get over that valley. And if it's a I should say a solution that is for the warfighter, we want to make sure we get that into the hand of the warfighter. Yes.
Different kind of question.
Yes.
Are you looking to hire talent, and if so, what
Are
are
we
you
looking
looking for, and what's the process?
Yes, we're always looking to hire talent, right? We need the talent is what's going to make this succeed. You know, it's make us successful. So we are on the 8th floor. You can come in anytime that there's a garage door, right? Anytime that's open, you're more than welcome to just come on in there. If it's closed, it's usually because we have a meeting or we have a VIP or there's something going on. There's a reason why it's down. But for the most of the time, the majority of the day, it's open. We do have office hours on Wednesdays from 12 to 3. That's usually for folks that want to come in and pitch their product, pitch us. But you can always come in there and use that time because you can make sure that door is always going to be open from 12 to 3 on Wednesday. So.
And that's AAL and AFC are both always hiring. I mean, up to this point, it's just been very interested in hiring.
On ArmyFuturesCommand.com, they actually have all the current job listings, and it's not just for here in Austin. It's so Army Futures Command is 26,000 people spread across the country and multiple overseas
Yeah, I've gone to the
locations.
website.
Mhm.
So they've got, at any given time, every time I've checked it, there have been at least a dozen jobs posted in here across
Yeah.
the country. So.
You mean AAL specifically?
And to be especially awkward.
The AFC, I've already got a notification that
Okay.
I'm eligible for
Nice.
one of the things that I've applied, but
For
I have some background that's pretty specific.
Yes.
They're looking for
Yes.
a lot of technical background experience too.
That's me.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and just I want to introduce our godfather, right? The guy that kind of built the Center for Defense Innovation here at Cabin Factory, Kevin Landrew. All right. If you have questions, Kevin can answer them just as well as the rest of us. So you don't mind me volunteering you here. Just
Please, it's why I'm here.
the wealth of experience and knowledge. Kevin founded TDIF. We talked about it earlier. Yeah, what other questions do we have?
You use other contracting vehicles like OTAs for prototyping, or is it just SBIR?
So right now, all we're putting out there right now is the BAAs, the broad agency announcements, and the Sivir 1 and 2.
Several of the agencies.
For Army.
Yeah, for the Army. Yeah, several of the agencies we discussed earlier.
Yeah, we're aware of
Okay.
Airforce and some of the other people that are using OTAs,
Yeah.
but I didn't know the Army was.
Not to mention some of the frequent guest defense partners that come through here. Yeah.
It's just for people who don't know, that's just another way a small business can participate in showing a prototype or building a prototype. It's very popular today.
As well as SCTRs too are also. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so, depending on how far you are, there's one thing we don't really like to publicize too much, but we do have the ability to go to General Mary, who's our 4-star commander, and say, hey, we've got this capability, we need it now, and he can actually authorize a payment, a direct payment. Yeah. But it's got, we haven't seen that yet.
It's still early. It's still early.
So you mentioned,
What was that?
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. It's I mean, the level of access and the level of interaction at all, from the base small business, minority owned, set aside, all the way up to 4-star command, in many cases above, like we were talking about. It's incredible what's happening here. There's a lot of momentum building, here, so.
When I think of all the wonderful, really no BS, these solved real Army problem projects that withered on the vine.
Hmm.
All right? You know, and what you're describing is, you know, just remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the 12 to 3 Wednesday kind of office hours.
Yes.
So if you're going for a pitch there, is it in lieu of the SBIR, or is it like, at what stage do you take people, like,
Right,
just
so,
walking in and?
yeah, no,
pitching
we'll
their
walk
ideas?
you through it, but that is just for us to give you your pitch. If it's the first time we're seeing you, first time we've heard of you, it's the first time you could get away. We know that if we have it out there, you know, hey, from 12 to 3, come see us,
Okay.
and it's, yeah.
So it's kind of informal. get
It's
involved.
very informal. Sometimes we have, we've had one presentation where, you know, the individual brought handouts, he had a PowerPoint, and it was pretty cool technology. It's a virtual reality, which that's one of our modernization efforts, so.
You know, and I wanted to piggyback off of that. You know, in one case, one of our, you know, special operations guest, you know, partners was here interviewing and scouting for technologies. They talked to one technology that somebody from Capital Factory was in the room, and then after hearing it, they went out and they grabbed somebody from our incubator, our venture wing, and within less than 2 weeks, they were brought into the accelerator program. It was a truly, like, potentially world-changing pitch and technology, something that got everyone in that room really excited, and certainly got us excited over at the at our venture wing. But Capital Factory is not just a network and a way of accessing a network. Capital Factory is also, like we said, it's a mentorship program, it's an accelerator, it's an investment fund. It is a lot of things that can help these startups both navigate, you know, government contracting, and also cross that valley of death and scale up and become, you know, what they want to be, or even pivot into something else. Find that separate commercial vertical, find equity share partners, things like that. You know, Capital Factory can be all of those things here, so you're not just reaching out necessarily, you know, to a defense partner, you're also reaching out to potentially an entire network that can help you in any aspect of business development. We had another question over there.
Yes, my father, he is electrical engineer and for test equipment, as well as software engineer, and he put together this prototypes that we can show a demo of testing high-end electronics and equipment, something that is hardware intensive, and basically it's really relevant to defense and I would say aviation, something that is mission critical, and I think I wanted to come here because this is exactly the relevant type of venue to kind of find what's the best way to apply this product to, and so I just wanted to get an idea of how we begin the process, because we already do have a functional product out there. And
So is that, it's a product, or it's a service or capability? It sounds
it's
more like
a
a service.
test equipment product to
Okay.
basically test any type of electronics that see if there's any shorts or any type of issues. Specifically, it's very technical. It's called boundaries scanning, and yeah. So I wanted
Yeah,
to see.
so I would tell you to go to AL.Army, and if you can submit that concept paper that we were talking about earlier, because it might not be an existing problem that we have right now, Army problem, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be an existing problem tomorrow.
Okay. It's AEL, right?
It's AAL.
AEL.
.Army.
And don't just stop there. Like we were talking about before, you know, if you're working in data compression, everyone from NGA, AFWorks' MDO to Army's APNT could all potentially use you, and the more success you have with one, the more potential success you have with the rest, right? So there are so many technical requirements out there, and you know, be sure to don't hedge your bets. Go to every agency that could possibly use it, and find out what find out what they really need and how your technology can fit a niche within that.
I see, and then you also mentioned something about minority
Yes,
businesses.
this is, this is more kind of like the baseline traditional, small business administration, GSA stuff. But yes, there are minority and veteran set-asides that basically try to help with the traditional bid process. Now, I'm not exactly sure where those set-asides on the GSA side and how that is actualized upon within the Sivir realm. Actually, do you have?
It's the same.
It's the same, so it maybe would be a slight, competitive advantage. I know that when you're bidding in the traditional GSA infrastructure, you cannot just use your set-aside to secure a contract. You have to actually have a competitor that also has that set-aside, thereby making sure you don't lock out the competition. When you're talking about things like HubZone is a very, very, very restrictive qualifier. Usually it's historically Native American reservations and other such populations. You absolutely have to invite a competitive technology or service to bid against you. Like in many cases, it's very common that you have a product, but you have to find somebody else that has the same set aside, and you invite them to compete with you, because otherwise no one's getting the contract. I don't think that any of that will really apply when we're talking about the types of business development and research grants that SIPR and SCTR represent, but the best place to go for that is the SBA website. They're actually, it's kind of it's a big bureaucratic website, but like they're actually not that bad at kind of like walking you through the process. And get as many set-asides as you can. They're absolutely worth it.
I would just tell everyone to go through AL.Army. We have been getting back to folks around a 2-week period. If you don't hear from us in like 2 weeks, I would come visit us. Just come visit us, walk on in there. If you submit something that we know we can't use or it's just not, we know it's not going to be a solution right now, or there's not a problem for it, we will go ahead and pass it to someone else, and not just pass it like that. We'll make sure that they really want it, and we'll keep calling around, and we'll call you back and tell you what we did. There's two submissions that we actually handed over to InQtel. They were very interested in it, so we're here to help everybody. So.
How many veteran small business owners do we have in the room? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. The set aside we talked about earlier. There's a veteran category. Are you registered on there with SBA as a veteran-owned small business?
In FBO, we've got this stuff. More on that later. I'd love to talk to you aside.
Okay. Yeah. Also, a woman-owned small business too is a set aside. Any other questions? Anything not necessarily Army specific, but just what the ecosystem that we're building here.
So does this also work for NASA? Because I think they have a similar thing. But does that play within this space, or do we have to go to a different playground?
They absolutely do play within the space, but I want to defer to Kevin.
So NASA has their own SBIR program. They have their own. They were actually they were the original users of the OTAs back in the '60s when we were trying to get to the moon in 7 years. Excuse me. They have a couple of their own innovative programs as well. One of which is called X-Tech Search, which are these cycles that they do, I want to say, every other month. They're doing one here the week of right leading up to South by. And essentially, it's a big pitch competition where they put out a bunch of really interesting topics, in space. Kind of the two main goals that they're looking to solve are, one is they want to allow human life to exist over long periods of time on the moon, and they want to get to Mars. So any solution really that accomplishes one of those two things, they're super interested in. And most of it's like biomedical stuff and energy efficiency and different ways of growing food and just crazy stuff like that. Of course, some of it has to do with space propulsion and navigation and communication as well.
But space is one of ours as well. Space is one of our 31 modernization efforts. It falls under there. It's on that cheat sheet. So please, submit. We just had one of our first space submissions the other day, so, yeah.
Oh, are you able to talk about APNT or how that's developing a little bit?
No, we just did our first, like, deep dive with them, and we're going to kind of regurgitate all that later, so
Yeah.
can't do that right now. I don't
Okay.
wanna.
Cause I like the APNT program, cause it's just like, wow, what's it gonna look like, you know, when it starts developing, so. Yeah, we have a happy hour that's, gonna be in the kitchen right next door here, and all of us will be in attendance for a while. If you guys wanna, you know, ask us questions offline, and share business cards, talk amongst yourselves about how you, oh, it's on.
Don't mean to interrupt,
Oh.
housekeeping question, will these slides be available?
Sure, I think we can make them available.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. What I'll do is I can get a list from Rebecca, and then we can go ahead and send a follow-up email. In that I will include the links to all of the websites with the actual solicitation links on them.
Thank you.
No problem.
You are a god for doing that.
Thank you all for coming. We're really happy to have you all, and don't make this the last time I see you. Just come on by. We'll see you.
Questions and the answers always get better after a year or two.
Yeah.
Remember me?
Yeah. It's been a while.
Well, the last time we saw you, I got back. I saw you back on the galvanized event from Colombia.
Yeah.
It was a while ago. I just wanted to say hi. I didn't realize you were doing. I feel like we were the ones doing it, so it was very cool.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was either.
Well, you were in the pictures. At least they put you on the. This is very interesting.
What it's called.
Maybe we'll talk in the future. I'm very interested in see if there's a way to do it.
Okay. Company. What do you want to I mean, so.
I'm the deputy of operations, the director of operations, so I sit right under, he is in charge of hires.
So is it better than just in your soft copy?
Seemed really interesting. Like your wife mentioned, it seemed like a really good opportunity, and seemed to be quite aligned with like a lot of what I do in the private sector, so it might be a. Nice to meet you. Yeah. Maybe see you guys around.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes.
All the checklist
Yeah, yay. That's awesome. That's awesome. I will definitely make sure that gets in the right hands.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I might, not this
And
Wednesday.
are you local right now?
Yes, I live in Austin.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved from Seattle to Austin.
So you can just even pop in at some.
I will, tomorrow, I'm actually going to Houston.
No, that's perfect, because that'll give him time to kind of
But
adjust.
I do plan to come by Wednesday.
We need to build our team.
Yeah, I can tell.
We're very.
I don't know much about your side of the world, but
Yeah.
with stuff like what you were talking about.
Yes.
I do.
Yes, and that's what we need, yes.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks, I'm excited.
I'm
And,
excited.
you know, it's great, like, there's so much opportunity for us.
If there is. We came here.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
it's really a great opportunity. for
We heard that
innovation.
it's like the hub of innovation, right, so.
Yeah, it's super, super exciting to hear. Thank you.